Between 10 AD and 15 AD, the ancient world was standing at a turning point in history, where powerful empires controlled vast lands, yet hidden tensions were shaping the future of entire continents. At first glance, the Roman Empire appeared completely dominant, ruling millions of people across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Rome was not just a city, but a system of power built on discipline, engineering, and military strength. Its roads stretched across thousands of kilometers. Its armies guarded every frontier, and its cities represented the peak of ancient civilization. But beneath this surface of control, a silent danger was growing in the forests beyond the Rhine River, where loyalty, identity, and betrayal would soon collide in a way that Rome could never fully predict. During this period, Emperor Augustus was still the central figure of Roman power. He had transformed Rome from a republic torn by civil wars into a structured empire with centralized authority. His leadership created stability, economic growth, and expansion across multiple regions. Roman cities flourished, trade routes expanded, and the Mediterranean Sea became a highway of commerce connecting Africa, Europe, and Asia. Rome itself was a massive urban center filled with temples, forums, baths, and marketplaces, where people from different cultures lived under Roman law. To many in the ancient world, Augustus represented order, and Rome represented permanence. However, beyond the northern borders of the empire, the situation was far less stable. The Rhine River marked a critical boundary between Roman-controlled territories and the lands of the Germanic tribes. These tribes were not unified under a single empire. Instead, they were divided into many independent groups, each with their own leaders and warriors. Some traded with Rome, while others resisted Roman influence. The Roman leadership had long believed that these regions could eventually be brought under imperial control, but they underestimated the complexity and resistance of these tribal societies. The most significant shadow over this frontier was the memory of a catastrophic Roman defeat that had occurred just before this period. In the forests of Germania, 3 Roman legions had been ambushed and destroyed. This event shattered Roman confidence and forced the empire to reconsider its expansion strategy. It was not just a military loss, but a psychological shock that revealed Rome was not invincible. The man connected to this event was Arminius, a figure whose identity would become one of the most controversial and mysterious stories of the ancient world. Arminius was not an unknown tribal warrior from the beginning. In fact, he had been trained within the Roman military system and had served Rome directly. He understood Roman tactics, discipline, and battlefield strategy better than most Roman commanders themselves. He spoke Roman language, operated within Roman military structure, and had even gained Roman citizenship. To Rome, he appeared to be a loyal ally and a useful leader among the Germanic tribes. But internally, Arminius was deeply connected to his own people and understood their growing resistance to Roman expansion. Between 10 AD and 15 AD, Arminius's influence among the Germanic tribes continued to grow, even though Rome still underestimated the long-term consequences of his actions. He became a symbol of unity for tribes that were previously divided, showing them that Rome could be challenged. His knowledge of Roman systems gave him a strategic advantage that no tribal leader had ever possessed before. While Rome strengthened its military presence along the Rhine, building forts, organizing patrols, and securing supply routes, Arminius was quietly shaping alliances in the forests beyond Roman control. At the same time, Rome itself was going through a critical internal phase. Emperor Augustus was aging, and questions about succession and future leadership were becoming more important. The stability of the empire depended heavily on the systems he had created, not just on his personal authority. Military commanders along the frontier continued to manage tensions with the Germanic tribes, launching limited campaigns and defensive operations to secure Roman borders. Among these commanders, Roman leaders increasingly realized that Germania was not a simple territory to conquer, but a region filled with unpredictable resistance and difficult terrain. While these military tensions developed in Europe, the wider ancient world continued to function through complex trade networks. Egypt remained one of Rome's most valuable provinces, supplying grain that fed the population of major cities. Alexandria stood as a major hub of trade and knowledge, connecting different civilizations through its port. Merchants from Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East passed through its markets, exchanging goods and ideas. Further east, trade routes extended toward Asia, where silk, spices, and precious materials moved across long and dangerous journeys before reaching Roman markets. In the east, the Han Dynasty of China remained one of the most advanced civilizations of the time. The Chinese government maintained a highly organized bureaucracy that controlled agriculture, taxation, and infrastructure. The capital city Chang'an was a massive urban center filled with officials, traders, scholars, and craftsmen. China's silk production remained one of the most valuable industries in the ancient world, creating long-distance trade connections that linked East Asia with Central Asia and beyond. Even though Rome and China had no direct contact, they were indirectly connected through these trade networks. As this period progressed, it became increasingly clear that the ancient world was not isolated into separate civilizations, but was slowly becoming interconnected through trade, war, and migration. Yet despite this growing connection, political power remained fragmented, and each empire focused primarily on its own survival and expansion. The Roman Empire strengthened its borders, the Germanic tribes strengthened their alliances, and the Han Dynasty continued internal development under growing political influence. By the end of this phase, the stage was being set for a deeper conflict that would define the relationship between Rome and the northern tribes for years to come. The empire believed it had stabilized its frontiers, but in reality, it had only created the conditions for a much larger historical shift. Behind the forests of Germania, alliances were forming, strategies were developing, and the memory of Rome's defeat was becoming a powerful force that could not be ignored. And in the center of all these hidden movements stood Arminius, whose actions would continue to cast a long shadow over Rome's ambitions. As the years moved forward from 10 AD into 15 AD, the Roman Empire entered a phase where military caution, political transition, and frontier uncertainty defined its direction. The memory of the earlier disaster in Germania still haunted Roman commanders, and even the most powerful empire in the ancient world had begun to realize that expansion without limits was no longer possible. Rome still stood as the strongest political force of its time, but its confidence had been deeply affected by events beyond the Rhine River, where a hidden resistance was quietly shaping history. In Rome itself, a major turning point came in 14 AD, with the death of Emperor Augustus. His passing marked the end of an era that had transformed Rome from a republic into a structured imperial system. Augustus had built the foundations of Roman stability, and his long reign ensured that the empire functioned with strong institutions rather than constant civil war. After his death, power transitioned peacefully to Tiberius, a moment that demonstrated the strength of Rome's political structure. However, this transition also created uncertainty, as the empire now had to continue without the man who had shaped its identity. While Rome adjusted to new leadership, the northern frontier remained tense and unstable. Roman military commanders maintained heavy defensive positions along the Rhine, where forts, supply routes, and garrisons were constantly reinforced. The Roman army, known for its discipline and engineering ability, focused on securing borders rather than launching deep expansion into Germanic territory. The lessons of the past defeat had changed Roman strategy permanently. Instead of attempting full conquest of Germania, Rome now aimed to contain and control the frontier region through military presence and selective campaigns. At the center of this frontier tension remained Arminius, whose role became increasingly significant in shaping Germanic resistance. He was not just a warrior, but a strategist who understood Roman military thinking from the inside. His ability to unite different tribes gave the Germanic world something it had never possessed before: coordination against a common external power. Even though the tribes remained culturally and politically divided, Arminius acted as a unifying force that strengthened their resistance against Roman influence. His name became both a symbol of victory and a warning for Rome. Roman commanders, especially figures like Germanicus, attempted to respond to this growing challenge through military campaigns across the Rhine. These campaigns were not aimed at permanent occupation, but at restoring Roman authority and punishing rebellious tribes. Roman legions marched through difficult terrain, facing unpredictable resistance from Germanic warriors who used forests and geography as natural defense. Although Rome achieved some tactical victories, the campaigns highlighted the difficulty of controlling such a vast and hostile region. During this same period, the wider ancient world continued to function through expanding trade networks. The Roman Empire maintained strong economic connections across the Mediterranean, where ships carried grain from Egypt, wine and olive oil from Europe, and luxury goods from distant provinces. Alexandria remained a vital trade hub, connecting Africa, Asia, and Europe through its strategic position. The movement of goods across these regions showed that even without direct political unity, the ancient world was becoming economically connected. In the East, the Han dynasty of China continued to develop under its administrative system, with officials managing agriculture, taxation, and infrastructure across a vast territory. The capital Chang'an remained a center of political power and cultural development. Silk production continued to drive long-distance trade routes that connected China to Central Asia and indirectly to the Roman world. These routes, later known as parts of the Silk Road, allowed rare and valuable goods to travel across continents, shaping economic relationships between distant civilizations. Technological development during this period was gradual but meaningful. The Roman Empire continued improving roads, bridges, and aqueduct systems that supported urban life and military movement. Engineering remained one of Rome's greatest strengths, allowing the empire to maintain control over large territories. In China, administrative systems and record-keeping methods became more refined, helping the government manage population and resources effectively. Across different regions, improvements in tools, agriculture, and navigation slowly increased efficiency and trade capacity. Despite these developments, life for ordinary people remained largely centered around agriculture and local production. Most people in the Roman world lived in rural areas, working as farmers, while cities served as administrative and commercial centers. In China and India, similar patterns existed, where agriculture formed the backbone of society and trade connected local economies to wider regional networks. By the end of 15 AD, the ancient world had not undergone a sudden transformation, but it had entered a period of deep structural change. Rome had lost some of its expansionist confidence. Germania had emerged as a symbol of resistance, and China continued its steady administrative growth. Trade routes expanded across continents, connecting civilizations that would never meet directly but were still linked through commerce and exchange. The most important outcome of this period was not a single battle or invention, but a shift in power perception. Rome was no longer seen as completely invincible. The Germanic tribes had proven that resistance was possible, and leaders like Arminius had demonstrated that knowledge and strategy could challenge even the strongest empire. As the period came to an end, the ancient world stood on the edge of further change. The political structures of Rome, the resistance of Germania, and the stability of China were all moving toward new directions that would define the next phase of history. The story of 10 AD to 15 AD was not just about events, but about a changing balance of power that would continue shaping the centuries ahead.